welcome to the Master G Theater. I am your host, the Master G. I am joined by my co-host, partner, business, this, that, the third, and of course, you all know him, DJ Boom.
I'm here on the couch all by myself.
Yeah. Just get you over there where you need to be.
Lonely on the couch.
Yeah. So, yes, we have a host of folks. Shout out to RBI. Shout out to all other crew that's here and so forth and so on. Our show is a great show. We talk about everything from tacos to taxes, hip-hop heads, people that really love our music, our culture. Today
is extra special.
Today is extra special. Actually, I have a fellow New Jerseyan / travel individual. We got my man, Glen Friedman.
Glen Friedman's in the building, everybody. Round of applause.
Give it up for Glen. Give it up for Glen.
Thank you.
So shout out to all the hip-hop heads. Shout out to all the people that listen to the show, watch the show, YouTube, all the social media things. If you don't know about our show, man, we really get into it. We delve into the Gilded Age of hip-hop, as I was duly
There's the
known.
Golden Age and the Gilded Age.
And the Gilded Age, right. And the Golden Age, and therefore up to and including today. So we're going to do some cool things.
Today on the show is kind of a special show, and the reason why it's special is because it's surrounding a book. Glenn, do you mind just grabbing a copy of your own book there?
Hold your book.
So Glenn is the author of a book called Together Forever, and of course we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about all of the amazing photographs that this iconic American photographer has taken of the Beastie Boys and of Run DMC. But what's nice on this show is that we get to delve just a little bit deeper. So even though we're talking about and we're promoting this amazing book, he's actually sitting next to a 1987 original vintage Together Forever poster that he will eventually sign and that will hang in our museum. But let's start We have to ask a question that we ask everyone, Glenn.
Yes.
And the question is, what's the first hip-hop song that you remember ever hearing?
Wow.
Well, the first one I remember loving was the Funky 4+1.
Whoa.
It's The Joint.
Yes.
And I think at the same time I had a tape that also had The New Rap Language by the Treacherous Three.
Wow. Yeah. Well, okay.
No, but of course I probably heard what everyone heard. The Sugarhill Gang's Rapper's Delight.
Where did you hear those? Why were you able to listen to rap?
Well, I think Rapper's Delight was everywhere. I mean, we were punk rockers. We were always listening to all kinds of music. And it was just new. And it was just, that's all, that's why we heard it. You know, we were just, you're always in record stores, you're looking for new stuff. And, hip hop just came up. It's like the equivalent, it's like Black Kids' version of punk rock. It's like, they split from the mainstream and we're doing their own thing. So that's why we fall into that. That's why we hear it. People down here in DC, we're listening to go-go. In Los Angeles and in New York, we were listening to hip-hop.
Yeah.
And you and G have something in common.
Yes, we do. So
tell us, what do you guys have in common?
So I'll start, and then you go ahead and jump in. So as people know or don't know, Sugarhill Records was in Englewood, New Jersey. My folks were from Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn, and I moved to New Jersey, so we were in the Englewood area. Unbeknownst to me, and of course finding out today, Glenn, you too have roots in Jersey.
I definitely started an early years of my life in Englewood, New Jersey. Quarles Elementary School, they say, is one of the first integrated elementary schools in the country.
Yes.
And I was there in Englewood for first and second grade.
Yeah.
And I grew up, a good part of my life
and then
before
that
I moved
area,
to California in Englewood.
Yeah. So, it's funny that, this is our first meeting. We're born the same.
Same year.
Same
elementary school.
Same elementary school.
Actually, we might have been in school together. Same year.
Very possible.
Yeah.
It's very possible. I think the thing about Englewood is so much happened in that area. It was so close to New York. A lot of people don't realize, and I try to explain that to
It's
people.
right across the bridge from New York City.
Right.
Once you cross the state line,
Yes.
you get off at Jones Road or down further on Dean Street or Palisade
Grand
Avenue.
Avenue,
Grand
all of that,
Avenue.
yeah.
That's what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
It's like 5 minutes from the bridge.
Literally, yeah. And so I tell people a lot. People say, "Well, where are you from?" I tell people I was really literally raised on the George Washington Bridge because my mom's folks were from Brooklyn, my dad's folks were from Mount Vernon, and we were in New Jersey. So my whole life, you go back and forth. You're going up the Sawmill Parkway to get off on 233rd, and and you're coming through back over George Washington
You
Bridge.
ever walk across the bridge?
No.
I did that just the other day with my son. We
Did
just
you?
did it for the hell of it. Yeah, it's
How
a long
was it?
walk.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, but it was nice. It was nice.
Okay.
How long did it take?
It's about a 20-minute walk at least, and that's at a fast pace.
Yeah, no, I've
man.
never walked across. Driven across it a million times. As a matter of fact, I was just up there. We just did a show in Huntington, Long Island, and I was in Englewood. And I do this thing whenever I go back home. I drive and I go through like streets, and it's always like
Everything looks smaller now, right?
it looks smaller, but it's also kind of like a little mind blow because it's like when what I was thinking about before everything happened, like walking down Palisade Avenue, and we got discovered in front of a pizza parlor, a place called Crispy Crust.
And Baumgart's. And,
Baumgart's, yes.
And
Yes.
the theater there where I saw my first James
John
Bond
Arms.
movie.
John Arms.
And,
I saw
the
Dirty Harry
library
there.
And the library up there, right?
Yes.
At the
At
top
the-
of Palisade Avenue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wrote my first report for school.
Yes, yeah. Now it's a bank. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of
Well, you guys both also got into technology early. So check this out.
What?
So you were DJing, right?
yes, I did.
So
I started
Master
out.
G, like
Yes.
at what, 15, 16?
15.
15.
Yeah, I started
You're getting
DJing.
into DJing, right?
Yes.
Because your folks, you know what I mean?
Yeah, my dad was a recording engineer. So in Teaneck, we had a studio in the basement of our house in Teaneck. So I was always around audio equipment. And then, like you said, hip hop started coming from over the bridge. And so I got an idea to make extra money. I would DJ because that's what was the big thing at the time. So I started DJing in house parties in Hackensack, New Jersey, and that's kind of what really got me going to even rapping. The reason why I started rapping is because I wanted to compete with another DJ in Hackensack to get more parties. So I figured if I rapped, I would have a better chance of people wanting me to do the parties. So that's what made me.
Glenn, I only assume
rapping.
that you picked up the camera for the same reasons.
Yeah.
You wanted to get more chicks.
I picked up the camera because I saw things going on in front of me that I knew I wanted to share with other people, things that were inspiring me. And I wanted other people to see what was going on. I was seeing something that was going on that no one else was seeing anywhere else in the world. I just knew that as a fact. Wow. And as a
Wow.
teenager, I thought, there was a magazine out at the time, but what I was seeing was different than what I was seeing with my own eyes was different than what was being portrayed in the magazine, the one that was out at the time in 1975, 76.
What magazine was that?
Skateboarder magazine,
Okay.
the original Bible, they used to call it. And,
Okay.
and it really did, it became international. It spread skateboarding all over the world. People became aware of it. The culture grew because of that back then. But I happened to also be growing up right in the epicenter of where skateboarding developed in Los Angeles. After I moved from New Jersey, I moved to Los Angeles. The first gift I got was a skateboard
Oh, wow.
in 1971.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And, so it was just going to happen, right? And there you go.
No, that's serious. We talked about this. One of the things that people who have documented the beginning of it, people don't really know what it was like to be there then, unless you were there. And the only way that people can really even get an idea is through, the photographs.
Because you didn't have camera phones, you didn't
Exactly.
have all the video,
That's what I'm
you didn't have
saying,
all
yeah.
that. But honestly, someone like me, I think that what I saw was going on, I didn't really feel as though I was a documentarian. I was trying to inspire other people. I was trying to share things that I saw. I wasn't there just to document it, right? And really, and I think that's why the pictures last as long as they have and speak as they do, because honestly, I idealized those moments in time and those situations
evident.
so that they would last. and inspire other people, but really just to inspire people at that time.
Where did you get your first camera?
My first published photo I got was with a borrowed camera, and before that, the camera's probably just my parents or something. I was just 12 years old.
12 years
By
old.
the way,
11, 12 years old.
Do you recall what subject
Shout out
matter?
to the sock game. Shout out to the sock game.
Oh, he's got
Yeah,
good
look at
socks
yours,
too.
Yeah.
Do it
Okay.
on
See.
purpose.
There you go.
Are you guys competing in sock game?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we are. We're the same age.
Should have
Yeah,
given you a
that's
heads up.
Sidebar. Go ahead.
But at 12 years old, what was the subject matter of your first photographs?
Skateboarding. I was a skateboarder, and what I saw was going on in front of me was something that wasn't going on anywhere else, and I was aware of that. And so, I just thought I had to do. It's like I took it as a personal responsibility. I'm seeing something that no one else is seeing, and I have a unique vision, so I have to make pictures
At 12.
so other people would see it. Well, I'd say that's when I started doing it a little bit. I didn't have quite that attitude about it, but by the time I was 14, yes.
Oh wow.
That's what I was thinking. Because I was also hanging out with guys. Imagine, I was hanging out with basically, the Sugarhill gang of skateboarders
I got
in a
you.
way.
Right.
Yeah,
They were
yeah,
the very
yeah.
first, the people right there. And and of course we know that there's people before the Sugarhill gang, and there's people like Grandmaster Kaz and all those people who really set a foundation
No question.
for these guys' record
No question.
to be made. But and of course there was skateboarding in the 60s, but the guys I knew were the guys that kind of made it go.
They're the ones who brought it to the
worldwide.
world.
It became
Yeah.
really, really, like, it made it a culture. It
Yes.
made it something that people wanted to be a part of. It
Yes.
wasn't just a fad anymore.
Yeah.
Do you see a parallel between skateboarding and hip hop?
Yeah, I see a parallel between skateboarding, punk rock, and hip hop. Absolutely. It's all rebellious people. It's all about attitude, right? And everyone had a very similar attitude, I think, in the beginning. People were doing it because they loved it. People were doing it because it was youth doing their own thing. No parents could tell you in the 70s how to ride a skateboard. No parents in the 70s could tell you how to be in a punk rock band. No parents could tell you how to start DJing and being a rapper.
Right.
In the 70s. It just didn't exist. It was generated by the youth themselves, and I think that's what's so incredible about all these cultures, right?
Yes, I agree with you. He's spot on. It was definitely a point of disconnection between what we were doing and what was being thought about or looked at as far as our parents and all the adults. That's part of the reason why the older generations were the ones that really were thinking that it wasn't going to last, because it didn't coincide.
Haters.
Well,
They didn't know what we were talking about.
Right.
They
They
felt
didn't-
left
they
out.
didn't-
They
exactly.
felt
That's
left
what
out,
I'm-
and they had
yeah.
to say it was garbage because they just didn't know what the fuck it was.
Exactly.
That's their problem,
Yeah.
not
literally,
ours.
literally,
Yeah.
literally. And so,
Yeah.
yes, so you definitely find it was the voice of the culture of the that people, that environment, that neighborhood. Again, it was something that we could say and we could do that was totally ours, and it turned into what it's become.
We want to showcase, it's not like we can't talk to Glen about everything forever and ask him about how he, met the Beastie Boys and got with Run DMC. But we want to kind of do it through pictures, right? Because he's got this amazing book that we want. If you're watching the show right now, please go to nationalhiphopshop.com and pick up a signed copy of the book online.
Put that up
Together
there, yeah.
Forever. But right now what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of these photographs, if everyone can see up on the projector. This is a 1985 photograph of the Beastie Boys. But it's this photograph, it's funny. 'cause
Jeremy, you took it off of fucking Instagram? You couldn't get it out of the book?
I know, right? I only did that because Loyola Marymount University posted it themselves. And I thought that was interesting, right? That they're proud of this moment. But let us hear from you. Tell us about this moment. This is a very early shot of the Beastie Boys.
Yeah, I think this is the first time I shot them. I met the Beastie Boys at a Bad Brain show, at a punk rock show in New York City, outside CBGB's. And Adam Yauch had his skateboard. He had a Powell board. He knew who I was because of Skateboarder magazine, and I became friends with them. We had some mutual friends, and that's how I became friends with them. But when they were first coming to California for the very first time, where I was living, my mom and moved my brother and I out there when I was younger after Englewood. They didn't know anyone else in Los Angeles, and they were coming to Los Angeles, of course, to open for Madonna on the Like a Virgin tour. And they had
Wow.
3 days at a pretty big size venue, not a Coliseum yet, but a pretty big venue. They were opening up for Madonna at, and they didn't know anyone else in town, so they called me. And I had just stopped managing and producing and working for a band called Suicidal Tendencies, right? And I was at school at UCLA, and I was just kind of winding down my experience as a manager in that scene. But you know, I was in school, but hip hop was coming up. This is like 1983, 84, and Run DMC's first album had just come out. And these guys tell me that they're, you know, we had my friend Ian and I, we had heard their hip hop record on Def Jam, one of the first independent releases they had, and we're just like, wow, these guys are like, they're really doing it. And they had Cookie Puss before that, right, which was kind of a joke record.
Right.
And you know the Beastie Boys, they have an incredible sense of humor, and pretty
Right.
much everything is a joke to them, right?
Right.
But they're out on this tour with Madonna, and they called me to show them around. And I hadn't been doing anything for a while. I'd just been going to school. I wasn't working with the band anymore. And so I was really excited to hang out with them because I just loved what was coming out of New York. I loved the idea of hip hop and everything. And I think just a couple years before, Yauk had brought me, he didn't bring me, but he invited me to stay after another event we were at the Roxy to see the Rocksteady crew. And this was in 1982. And really, that was my real introduction to hip hop, like in person, right? Was seeing Crazy Legs and Doze and all these guys, you know, breaking in the middle of a roller rink, you know, like before it was a thing there. Like, you know, people were still roller skating around there. So the Beastie Boys is part of the reason I got into hip hop. But when they were a group and they came to Los Angeles and we got to hang out, I hadn't made any pictures in a couple of months. You know, like the punk rock scene was winding down a little bit, and my involvement in it, you know, I've always loved punk rock, I still do to this day, but my involvement in it was just like waning, and I was in school a lot, and just seeing the Beasties was like a breath of fresh air, right? And so I started just making pictures of them on this tour just for the fun of it. We just started making pictures. They had nothing to do in the daytime. I would show them around where I grew up. I'd take them to the skate spots, and I actually got them on this radio show at KXLU, which was like the greatest college radio station in Los Angeles at the time. And there was a guy there named Adam Baum who loved the punk rock Beastie Boys, and I knew him because I had been on his show myself several times, and we brought the Beastie Boys down there to go on KXLU. And if you look up, you could look up that interview on KXLU of them. It is insane. It's like, it's, you know, I mean, again, those guys on this trip in particular is like the first time I really hung out with them. I mean, they'd have me crying every 15 minutes from laughter. I mean, they were just so ridiculous and so stupid. So if you go listen to that radio show, you'll understand why. But that day that we took all these photos at Loyola Marymount, we were just killing time before and after we went on the radio show. And like all the architecture around there, as you could see in those photos, it was just kind of cool, very 70s, you know, and we just started taking all these pictures there and just got all these classic shots. And actually, that session was my introduction to Def Jam and Rick Rubin and Russell Simmons, right? I didn't know Rick and Russell yet. And the Beasties are out there. I'm their only friend in LA. We're driving all over the place. I'm taking them up to Malibu. The only place I wouldn't take them to the Valley because I come from the West Side, and that just wasn't allowed back then. But that's where they really wanted to go because of Fast Times at Ridgemont High, right?
Right.
And I wouldn't take them there, but we went everywhere else, and we took pictures along the way because I hadn't been taking pictures in a couple of months, and it was just fun for me. And I love doing it, right, when it's something that's inspiring me. And what they were doing with hip-hop, being a punk rock band, at the moment was really, really inspiring. It made me think that I could do it. It made me think that me and my friends could do it, you know? So anyways, we made all these photos, and the session that we did, you know, went back with them to Def Jam. When they came back on tour, I sent them to Rick and Russell and Bill Adler, and they had never seen anything like this. They'd never had anyone make photos for real. Like, most hip-hop photos at that time were very amateurish, or they were in a studio.
Yes, in a
Right,
studio, yes.
Like
You
a
know?
glossy 8x10.
And I'm someone who had been shooting, you know, for a while at this point, even though I'm only, you know, 25 years old or something like that, from skateboarding and my punk rock experience. It's like, this is what I do, right? And they saw these photos and their minds were blown. And so from that point on, whenever any band would come to Los Angeles, I'm still enrolled at UCLA at the time, but when any hip-hop group would come to LA, because of these photos, I'm showing them around. I'm taking their pictures at the same time. I'm helping them get on the radio because I had connections with that stuff in LA because of the punk rock stuff that I had done. And that's where it all started. And, you know, and they loved this, this photo session, was my entree into that whole hip hop world, right? I mean, there's a lot of great shots from this day. And and everyone loved it. I mean, Rick to this day says it's his favorite photo session of all time.
It also captures it. First of all, when I was young and I first saw this picture, I thought that was the Kennedy Center because it looks
Really?
like, well, here in Washington D.C.,
Yeah.
it's very similar
Oh, okay,
architecture to the Kennedy Center. But also, he captures such an incredibly young Beastie Boys, kind of before they've hit the road,
Yeah.
before they've
Yeah.
It's before they ever had an album. They
Right.
only had a couple. They had like 1 or 2 singles out. This is like the time of Cookie Puss and maybe the first Def Jam release, and the MCAM Brazuti record. We're talking about the Burgundy Def Jam independent records before they were signed to CBS.
Oh, right.
Whose
So they got the
boombox
big,
was
the
that?
big.
What?
Whose boombox?
That was Horowitz's boombox for sure. I don't, and you could look closer at some of the pictures.
But does that mean he brought it on the plane with him?
Oh, he had.
Oh,
that
he
on,
definitely-
He definitely had that on tour
Oh,
with
yeah.
him for the whole Madonna tour. They would bring that out on stage with
Oh,
them and
yeah,
everything.
definitely.
And
You could
and
do
as
that
you
back
know,
in
there's
the
a
day.
bunch of pictures in the book that
Yeah.
feature that boombox pretty boldly. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you
Wow.
could definitely, you could carry that kind of stuff around. You sit it, in the overhead.
Here's another Beastie Boys shot. Obviously,
This is
many
later.
years
This
later.
is 1991. This is a day after I was hanging out with them in the studio. I hadn't hung out with them for a long time, and they're in LA working, right? They moved from New York. They're all in LA, and they invited me down to the studio where they had a basketball court and a skateboard ramp, and we kind of reacquainted, and they were out there, and I'm there hanging out playing basketball with them. They're showing me the ramp, showing me their whole setup, and they're playing me the tracks that are going to be the Check Your Head album. And it's just blowing my mind. Like, they're back with their instruments, and it was really the most incredible thing I had ever heard up to that point. I mean, it was really, really a fantastic album. And this is Thanksgiving 1991, and they were sequencing the album when I was there. They're trying to figure out what song goes where, and we're just listening to it. And I'm just like, I'm shooting hoops with them in their studio, just having fun, goofing around. And every once in a while, I just got to stand there and just listen, like, what the fuck are they doing with these fucked up microphones? It's crazy the way the bass is tuned and all these just all the crazy sounds coming out of it. And just, I was so inspired. I said, we got to go take pictures. Like, I'm getting back I came out to California for Thanksgiving to see my mom, and I was just there for that. And I said, can we do it tomorrow? I'm getting back on the plane. Let's do it tomorrow. I'm getting on the plane the next night. And I said, this is just incredible. We should just do photos like old times, because I had done a lot of photos with them since that first session, then the Spin magazine cover session that we did in New York City
Yes.
Oh,
by
yeah.
and we shot all around their first publicity photos when the album first came out, Licensed to Ill, right? So this is years later. They're in LA, and let's just, for old time's sake, let's just do it. You guys are doing great. No one's talking about money or doing anything like that. We just want I want to help promote this album because it's incredible. I want to get great photos that they deserve to have made, because they're incredible artists and they're funny as hell. Let's go out and make some photos. And Yauk had an idea or two. He actually wanted to shoot. His idea for the photo he wanted to get actually was he wanted to emulate a punk rock photo that I took of my good friend Ian Mackay, who's here, his band, Minor Threat, sitting on the porch. We're here in D.C., so that's why he's here, of
Right.
course. And he wanted to get a photo that was like that. And I said, okay, we were going to shoot it on the porch of his log cabin and make it look like that. But really, the feeling we ended up getting was that shot of them on the curb right when we all met, right by Capitol Records, that became the album cover. It wasn't the porch shot, but it was their version of the porch shot, right? It was we got that same feeling in the shot, which was really great. And yeah, I mean, that was another great day. I mean, that was an incredible session. We just had fun. We meet at Capitol Records. We all park our cars there, and we get in a van, and drive around all day. And we ended up in Santa Monica at the beach, right, near a pool that I used to take photos at for skateboarding photographs, and the rest is what it
there's
is.
only a few times in hip hop's history when it's intersected with punk rock or metal or rock. I'm wondering, what are your thoughts about the times? The Beastie Boys are obviously the most notable,
Yeah.
but there's been times, when
Absolutely.
Anthrax and Public Enemy got together. Obviously, Run DMC used
With,
rock and roll
Aerosmith.
heavily.
Yeah,
But
Aerosmith.
if there's one person that kind of epitomizes the visual aesthetic of the combination of punk rock and hip hop, it's Glen Friedman. So what do you, Glenn, think of how hip hop and rock have merged together? Have they been successful? Have they not been successful? What do you think of that?
Well, it is about the attitude that's shared, right? It's mostly about the attitude. I think a lot of the rock bands or the people that did like hip hop kind of rock, it's kind of corny to me.
Yeah.
I don't really care about it.
Yeah.
There's a few bands that did it well. Other ones are bad. The Beastie Boys were phenomenal. Rage Against the Machine is maybe in that territory.
Okay.
Phenomenal.
Okay.
What about Linkin Park? What do you think of them?
Not really my thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
All right,
know,
that's fair.
I
So then you
know,
don't like Limp Bizkit.
Definitely not.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But that's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah,
No, I
it's
don't think
fine.
anyone's
People
feelings
like
are
what
hurt.
No,
like-
nobody's upset.
I have a very particular taste. I don't actually like that much.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
when it I like what I like a lot, and when I like things, they inspire me. I want to inspire other people. Most of the music I like, I actually got to work with, you know, and pass that inspiration on. That's what That's what I think it's about. But I think that the parallels are there all the time. You know, when it's from the heart, it's from the heart. It doesn't matter what you're doing, and
True.
when it's fake, right?
True. Very true. I definitely agree. It's interesting to hear you talk, to be passionate about it, because that's always been the common denominator about the creative aspect.
That's why the work works as it does.
Right.
If there was no passion, no heart behind it,
Exactly.
it wouldn't matter.
Like I totally get it. You know, what I
I've
mean?
never been a hired gun. You're looking at a picture I
Right.
took of Chuck D right now. You know, I knew Public Enemy before there was a group Public Enemy.
Exactly.
I knew Chuck D and Hank Shockley, and I met them at the Raising Hell tour, but I had known about them from their demos from WBAU.
Yes.
And they had their own radio show.
Right.
And Chucky D had made the song Public Enemy as a production tool.
Right.
They wanted to get a deal with Def Jam to be producers. And Rick's like, no, you're going to make this a group.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, and we were friends.
Yes.
And I respected what they did. And I loved what they did. When I met Chuck and I was hearing what they were doing and listening to demos and being there while they were recording, they knew my stuff.
Right.
Those guys, they absorbed culture. They worked at record stores. Chuck
Yes.
D and Hank Shockley had my Rules fanzine, which I
Yes.
made in 1982. They knew what that was about. They said, you should do this for hip hop.
Yeah.
So, but those guys, seeing them and seeing what they were doing, I really thought to myself, like, this is overtly political.
Yes.
And politics was in hip hop from the beginning.
Oh, they won. Yeah.
But not as overtly political
Exactly.
as Public
That's what I was
Enemy.
gonna say,
And
yeah.
I'm like, and I was friends with these guys, and they respected what I'd done with the Beastie Boys and Run DMC and what they used to call they named it the Extra Strength Posse. That was Chuck's and Hank's name for that crew.
Okay.
For LL, Beastie Boys and Run DMC and the whole Rush Productions thing, right? That was their name for it.
Oh.
And they weren't coming in yet.
Wait,
they were
say
about
the
to be.
name again?
The Extra Strength Posse.
The Extra Strength Posse, and this is before they toured together?
Absolutely. They would refer to Run DMC, Beastie Boys, and LL Cool J, and the other bands in Rush Productions as the Extra Strength Posse because they had more power in hip hop than anybody
No
at
question.
the time.
Yes.
You were there on 298 Elizabeth Street,
Yeah.
and everyone was there.
Yeah. He's right.
Everyone was there on any given day. It was all happening out of that office right there.
That's right.
A block away from CBGB's, by the way.
Yeah. In the village.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
I
where
know.
all- that's where it was all
Gary
happening.
Harris took me there.
There you go.
Yeah. Shout out to Gary.
Shout out to Gary in
Yes,
the sky.
absolutely.
Rest
yeah.
in peace.
Rest in peace. Yeah. Yeah, he's right. I mean, again, for me, one of the great things about doing the show is that because of the trajectory of Sugar Hill Gang, I never at that time had a chance to really be immersed in everything. Because of course, we took off so fast, and I went from like doing parties and trying to get out of high school to world tours and all this other kind of thing. So
Incredible.
which is mind blowing.
Groundbreaking.
Yeah, but the thing that I love about doing this show now and this point is that all of that happened. I'm now getting to chance to know it and understand it. So this is amazing. Even like this show to talk to you, and you were literally physically in those places. Everybody wants to credit a lot of what we've done with the things that we accomplished, but the actual cultivation of this whole thing came from things like that. Came from those situations, came from Chuck, and it came from, Rick and all these different people, man.
And people like Chuck, I mean, he was a fan,
Right.
a humongous
Right.
fan of hip hop. That's why their shit speaks the way that it does. And not only the political upbringing that he had, as a child, it's like, he had to get it out like that. And what I was getting to with that photo, and that was later on, that was at the Black Steel of Our Chaos photo, the one that was up before,
Yeah.
of Chuck D. And that was on the video set. And that was actually the first, back then, Def Jam Rick Rubin was against doing videos. He did not want to have any music videos. And then it was when Rick was beginning to separate from Def Jam that they started doing them. And of course, he was the executive producer on Public Enemy's first record and on his second record as well. But by the time their third, he was long gone to LA doing stuff with Slayer and then, whatever else afterwards and all those rock bands that he worked with after that.
Why do you think Russell was against videos?
No, Rick
I mean,
was.
Oh, Rick was against
because
videos.
it just
Rick.
wasn't. It
Rick
wasn't
is-
the music.
Yeah.
It wasn't the fucking music. It was about the visual. Not that he respected visuals. He was very much a part of the visuals. When they did have them. When I'd shoot pictures of Beasties, he'd almost dress them. He would tell them what to wear and what he wanted, and he, a bit of a Svengali. I mean, there's some of us out there who like to control the whole thing. Yeah. I'm one of those people too with the photos.
Yeah.
And that's, but it's from passion for the art form, and that's why they do it.
That's why I brought it up.
But what I forgot the point I was trying to make about Chuck and that record at the time. But he was a fan, and I'll tell you, I know what it was. After I heard those demos and I hung out with Chuck and Hank and I knew how much they loved music and how much it meant to them and how they worked in record stores, I have to do this album cover. This is going to be mine because this is going to be the equivalent of the Clash for hip hop.
Wow.
Wow.
That's a good way to put it.
And that's
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
and not like it's Black Flag and Minor Threat and all the greatest punk rock bands, but it's commercial. It's going to be successful because it's on a major label in a different way, and it's going to spread their political message in much the way the Clash was trying to be political, but also
Yes.
in a
Yes.
in a mainstream way.
Very true.
Let me go to that image because I think the image of the Public Enemy album really speaks volumes. Can you tell us? I mean, it's such a dark photo that at the same time shows so much and gives so much feeling with so few visual cues. Can you tell us first of all where is everybody standing?
What is, yeah.
Well, this is we reenacted a basement party in the basement
more.
of
Say no
Spectrum City Studios.
Wow.
Spectrum City Studios out in Long Island. So that's where those guys had their record collection. That's where they created all their magic, was at Spectrum City. That was Hank and Chuck's spot.
Okay.
And Johnny Juice Rosado and Eric Sadler, all those guys
Okay.
did their thing. And that was a spot in Long Island. That was their own spot. It was like the basement of a rec center or something. And also Dr. Dre, who later went on to do, Yo MTV Raps and all
Yes,
that. They
yes.
were all out there, all the whole BAU
With Ed
crowd.
Lover.
What?
Dre and Ed Lover.
But this is before Ed Lover.
Okay.
That was later. Ed Lover and him joined up on that show.
Gotcha.
But Dre was in the band, The Original Concept.
Okay.
Remember? And he had
Okay.
a couple of singles out.
They were on Def Jam. Yeah.
That is correct. It's a different Dr. Dre.
Yeah, not the Dr. Dre.
It's DJ
Yeah.
Dr.
Yeah,
Dre.
That's
DJ
right.
Dr.
Well, they
Dre.
were both DJs too.
Oh, good
That's
point.
true too. Yeah, New York though. We're going
That's
to
right.
New York.
This is New York.
New York Dre. Yes.
No disrespect to Dr.
No,
Dre in
none.
Los Angeles, but that to
None.
me is the original Dr. Dre from The Original Concept because
Okay.
they had records out first.
Sure.
Anyways, we did the album cover there. So what's going? Actually, Chuck sketched out this. I have this original sketch that Chuck made of what he wanted to show in this picture, and his idea was him and his crew coming in to bum rush the show. They are taking over the show of hip hop, and that's why you see Flavor's hand reaching to put his hand on the record and stop the show, and they're about to come in and take it over. And that's what Yo Bum Rush the Show was about. And that's what that cover is portraying right there.
And he sketched that out?
He made a sketch that I have with a red pen on striped paper. And
You
he told
have
me
the
this is what
original
I
sketch?
still have that sketch.
Oh my gosh.
And that's going in the Smithsonian probably.
I would imagine.
And it was, he didn't sketch out. It was basically like this. He had the light from above and all his crew lined up and Flavor reaching for the record.
And what's your thinking? You look at the sketch and you think, how did you go from the sketch to creating it?
We were on a similar vibe, so we just did it. I said, I'm going to take this with my fisheye lens, the same lens that I shot Tony Alva in the Dog Bowl doing the first frontside air, the same lens that shot Minor Threat on the steps at Discord House. I used to take this picture of Public Enemy in the basement of their studio. And so you have the wide angle lens, so you see the environment, but you're also close to it. And it really, you can see that I'm right there next to the turntable that's in the foreground of the shot. And, people who know, and if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's moving.
That's one of my favorite pictures, actually. It's one of my favorite album covers I ever did, was that album cover.
This is an image that, I mean, I guess this
Yeah.
is back to
That was just a typical day across the street from Chung King Studios by the old police building that's now a big fancy condominium, or even was in the 90s. But that was just a day across the street from Chung King Studios, which is down the street from Def Jam, where, hip-hop is just blowing up at this moment. This is the golden age. Look at LL wearing his own T-shirt.
Yeah.
Look at how young Chuck D and Flavor are.
Yep.
The second album did not even come out yet. This is in between the first album and the second album, maybe even earlier. You have Ecstasy from Houdini in the background there.
That is X.
And everyone's just recording, at Chung King, which is right down the street from Def Jam.
I was wondering who that was.
That's X. It is
I
X.
don't know how you didn't know that.
Didn't recognize him without the
Without his hat.
Without his hat, but I haven't. Oh man, shot another one. God rest his soul.
Amazing. Oh, this is from
Wow.
that LA shot.
That was that 1991 session that we did the day after Thanksgiving. That was actually used on the cover of the New York Times after Adam passed, on the New York Times Magazine.
What's interesting is, just from a trends perspective, is before recently, I can't remember a time except when the Beastie Boys did it that young kids were wearing winter caps when it wasn't winter out.
That's the point. Yeah.
It's just a. Oh, is it
He got his own today. There you go.
really?
Yeah. It's the
Wow.
thing. Okay.
Must be a DC thing.
And I've had a pretty long time to be Master G. Okay.
No doubt.
And so I've had a love-hate relationship with pictures, saying that, I've probably been photographed or taken a picture. For example, I took 3 pictures before we even started today, right? Multiply that times 40-something years of being, this person. And I have gone through a very difficult acceptance, because some people are artists and they really appreciate the people, and then other people are kind of butchers.
And they're just voyeurs. They're just taking pictures of something to, create content, or
Exactly.
just have a picture for no other reason than to maybe
Exactly.
document it. There's very little heart there. I mean, there's a lot of people that I photographed over the years that hate being photographed.
And I'm one of those people.
And Chuck D was one of them as well.
Yeah, I'm one of those.
But when you meet someone
Right. That's what I was
and
saying.
you actually know them, most of the people I
Then it's different.
photographed, I actually know.
That-
I'm
and-
actually friends with most of the people that are in my book.
Right.
I'm actually still friends with.
And that
There's
makes a
very
difference.
few people that I don't know.
It makes a big difference.
It makes all the difference.
Yeah, and then at the same time, then that's you were actually kind of hitting it. What I wanted, it's always been refreshing when you meet somebody who's as passionate about their thing as you are about your thing, because it becomes very commercial. This thing, especially now, this thing is so monetary and so meteoric and so gigantic and so global phenomena like that. Too many people get caught up in that aspect of it, and even to this day, as mainstream as it is, as we are, I still get the same. I told somebody this the other day. I still get the same feeling when I do a show and I'm on the mic. 63 years old, I'm still feeling I'm that 15-year-old kid in a basement
great.
in Inglewood.
That's great.
You know
That's
what I mean?
special, yeah.
That's the essence of why this still works for me. So it's nice to talk to somebody who, in a context that I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of, that appreciates it. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Run DMC has had. There's very few groups that have longevity like Sugarhill Gang. Run DMC, short of the passing of Jam Master Jay, has had kind of incredible, longevity and relevance. Can you speak with such affection about the Beastie Boys? And not that I can blame you, but can you tell us what was it like, hanging out with and taking pictures of Run DMC?
When I first met them, they the first album had just come out, so they weren't quite mainstream yet. And I had met them because of the Beastie Boys. And again, they had seen those photos. And as soon as I met them, I took it as, a real honor to be able to shoot them because I knew they were going to become, kind of successful. Like they actually were selling records and people were actually going to see these photos. Most of my images, besides the skateboard ones, were not seen very broadly. The punk rock photos were in fanzines and just within the scene, which is great. And they did what they were supposed to do to a degree, but I always wanted to expand it even more. I wanted my punk rock photos to be in the bigger magazines, to be in the bigger newspapers, because I wanted more people to be inspired by them.
Right.
I wanted people to know about these scenes. I didn't need it to be insular. I didn't need to be preaching the converted. I wanted more people to know about them. I was creating these beautiful images that I thought were to bring more people in, to expose people to it, to excite them about it, right?
Right.
By the time I met Run DMC, they were kind of big. They were playing bigger venues, a couple thousand people, stuff like that, And I just felt something was going on. There was something in the air that I knew this is going to be big in a weird way, like that I'm not really used to, but I want to help them spread their word. I want to portray them in a way they deserve to be portrayed. You look at some of their earlier photos and, they don't have the character or the composition or just quite the beauty. They do in their own way, some of them, because they're young and they're original, and there's some great photos of them, certainly. But like this photo right here that you're looking at is, this is my first, I spent 2 days in Hollis in a row. We went to shoot photos. Does someone want to get the phone? I went to Hollis. They had met me in Los Angeles when they were doing a show. Like I said earlier in the podcast, we were talking about when bands, after the stuff I did with the Beasties, whenever a Rush act would come out, I would work with them, and I would make photos with them, and I would help them with promotion. I got Run DMC some of their first coverage in rock magazines, right, because of what I was doing. I got them in BAM magazine in a big cover story, which was like Bay Area music. It's the first hip-hop group ever on the cover of that type of a magazine. And I was just helping them with their promotion at the time. But, the photos help that sometimes. You've got a good photo, people want to use it on a cover, something like that. But this was, so when I was shooting them, they realized that I cared about it as much as they did. They realized that I loved it, and they saw the work, and they had never seen anything like it. So they invited me to come back to New York to do their first tour book ever. So they flew me to New York, because I was still at UCLA going to school, to come to hang out with them in Hollis for a couple of days, to go to the Ritz and shoot some live photos of them. And so we have this great session, and this is one of the photos from it.
Did you say tour book?
Yeah, the 1985 tour book, the Run DMC tour book. You don't have that?
We do. I can't believe that's you who shot
Well,
that.
of course it is. They're all my photos. I designed the whole fucking thing.
That's amazing.
There you go.
Come on, man.
Did you ever ask?
Don't you look at these credits? Don't you look at these?
Clearly not. Do you ever ask, or give any direction for their wardrobe for when you're shooting bands?
Sometimes I do, but someone like Run DMC didn't really need it. No, I mean, we knew that we were together for 2 days in Hollis, and so we had a couple of changes of stuff, but it was, but no, those bombers were the shit at the moment, and obviously no one's telling them what to do with those hats. That was their thing, right? And Daryl with his glasses, that was his
Iconic.
trademark,
Yeah,
and
iconic.
even Joey with the sideburns at the time,
Yes,
Once he
yes.
cut those off, I felt a little bit of his character was changed. People didn't recognize him as much, but that was the moment. That was the moment right there, and that was by the buildings in Hollis. It was the only structure that was more than 3 stories high in the middle of Hollis was what they called the buildings. And there's an alley there where they used to rap and used to hang out. And they brought me there, and we walked around, and we got incredible photos that day. So probably, I think, my favorite photos of Run DMC. That was in 1985 that we did these, and there was some great stuff.
It seems like there's a theme of you. You remind me a little bit of kind of like Pat Riley, where there's a theme of you allowing the band to just be themselves, the groups to just be themselves, and you capturing them in their element. Does that seem to be a theme, or am I missing that?
Well, I shoot people in their own environment. That's what you have to do to make them to be comfortable, to be
yes.
real. Just
Yes.
People started saying
Yes.
around that time, let's keep it real. Well, that's the only way we know. And in the punk rock culture I come from, that's all there is to keep it real, right? So, but in hip hop, there was a lot of fronting, right? and that was a part of the culture for
It
sure.
was,
But
yes.
you know, and you could see, you know, some of the, you know, look at, I respect all the old groups, but when you see how some of them dressed in the early days, it was like I called it like Michael Jackson chic, right? You know what I mean? They were just wearing, you know, like these styles with like, you know, all the crazy bullshit they were wearing. But you know, Run DMC was keeping it street, like
Yeah.
Jam Master Jay. He kept them that way. I mean, you look at the first pictures of them; they're wearing plaid suits, right? Kind of like even what the Sugarhill gang might have been wearing in the
Yeah.
'70s.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But Run DMC, you know,
Yeah,
Jam Master Jay,
they brought it back.
yeah,
Yeah.
Jam Master Jay showed them, you know,
Yeah.
what was cool, and Russell, you know, and them, and you know, and they just wore what they did when it
Yeah.
was with the, you know, Adidas without the laces, and you know, and the leather suits, you know, that was their thing, and the
Yeah.
hats, you know, to this day, right?
Amazing.
But walking around the neighborhood, there were days that they weren't wearing that, but they were wearing, you know, this, you know, their uniform of what they would be wearing, whatever, you know, it was all very much what they would normally wear too. It just, I think Jam Master Jay gave him confidence to like say, no, we could actually look like this, just like what the Beastie Boys did. It's like, you know, if you look at the early pictures of them that I didn't take, you know, they're wearing do-rags and shit like this, trying too hard to be hip-hop, wearing Adidas suits, and then when they, you know, Rick and Russell and everyone else is just like, just be yourselves. And those are the photos that people identified with. Those are the photos that inspired people, right? The other ones look kind of hokey. But
What about
I mean,
the
they're
cover?
funny at this point, but you know.
What about the cover of the book? You're sitting next to it as
Yeah,
well. But
that
like,
is-
where is this?
That's right next door to 298 Elizabeth Street. That's right next door to Def Jam.
Wow.
And that's you know, people go to this day, you know, they go there and sit on those steps and take that picture. But the front door of that building next door to Def Jam, where that's shot, is much nicer now. They've got a big, beautiful door. It's been repainted. You know, everything's nicer now, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
cleaned up.
Yeah.
But we shot the other photos on the roof there. That's on the roof of Def Jam. These two right here, and this is just on the steps right out the front, right there on Elizabeth Street.
Wow.
And was this Together Forever was for their tour?
This was before the tour. They needed photos done, and everyone was getting kind of big at that time. And you knew by this point, everyone sold 1 million records. So it was a lot of pressure for me to get photos, and everyone's kind of a bit famous, and it wasn't as easy as the old days when you're just hanging out with your friends. It's like they're in demand. There's like 20 other photographers who want to take their picture right after you do.
Right.
And they did do stuff in the studio afterwards that they used on merchandise and things later, other than this poster and a couple of shots. But I think, you know, it was a different time. You know what happens when people get
Yeah.
kinda
I call
famous.
it being in the middle of your thing. You know, you
Is that Earl right there?
you get,
Oh my goodness. How you doing? It's good to see you. Do you live in DC? This is E-Love.
wow.
LL Cool J's posse.
Oh my God!
Wow.
That's the original.
In fact, he's the Public Enemy logo.
He's
Yeah.
sitting right there in the
Yeah.
logo. That is E-Love. I
That's-
recognize that face right away.
that's
Amazing.
Good to see
an
you, man.
amazing person to have in the audience,
As
Wes.
soon as the second I saw you, I knew it was you, right? We had.
Wow.
Is this motherfucker
That's
gonna
pretty
recognize
cool.
me?
That's cool.
That's
Very
great. That's
cool.
great. And I saw Todd not long ago. Do you still see him often? Do you see him ever? Oh, that's great. Yeah. That was great.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
nice.
But you know, when I knew this man, when I shot pictures of LL, this motherfucker didn't open his mouth.
So this is major, huh?
This is major. But all he did was he held the box. He held the box. Earl was with us this day, probably standing behind me.
You were there when that picture was
Of
taken?
course he was.
That's
Of course he
amazing.
was. Of course he was. That's at LL's high school.
That's amazing.
And whose car
That's
is
right,
that?
Andrew Jackson. That's LL's car. That's his car. He's standing on the car. We don't get props. We go out there.
Right.
It's me, him. Earl is behind us holding a couple of jackets, maybe. And that's that.
Wow.
And that's it. No one else is there. I might have had a tripod because I was trying to use a new big camera that day.
Right.
I'm
Why is
telling
the
you.
lighting so great?
Because it's
yeah.
a time exposure. There's no extra light. There's one flash on the front of the camera, and he's sitting there for 3 seconds. And I'll tell you the honest truth about that. There's only 2 shots that worked out with this light. I go with my gut when I shoot, right? Todd was sitting. We pulled the car right up to the fence, had him stand up right there. You see the composition of the lines. There's a lot to make a great photograph. You might think it looks great. You might not know why it looks great, but it makes you feel good looking at it, okay? So he has to stand still for like 10 seconds, still, to get that photo to work like that. I didn't set up any of those lights. Those are the and now your iPhones and all that, they could do that. Right. Back then, cameras did not do that unless the lens was open for a long time. The film is not as sensitive as your iPhones are and everything. Exactly. This was not easy to do. So to tell you the truth, when you look at this photo, it's not the perfect photo. It is compositionally. His feet are in sharp focus. His pants are in sharp focus. But as soon as because you had to stand still for 10 seconds. But his head might have moved a tiny bit. It's a little bit soft. Not that you care, but I care. Right. So it's not perfect.
So for all these years, that drives you crazy.
It drives me a little bit crazy. But the composition is good, and it speaks to people like many of the record covers or many of the things I've done over the years. The photos aren't the best ones, but they're the ones that work.
Right.
But this is great. And unfortunately, I don't know if it was the kook art director or who it was that lost the film, but the film is actually gone. Wow. I had one really shitty print I have that we make scans of that we use, for video and stuff. Nothing good enough to go in a book again from that exact shot. The film is just gone, disappeared. But back then too, it's like you shoot a photo and it's on the cover of LL's album. You kind of okay, it's done. There's nothing else you need it for. That's done. What else do you need it for? 30 years later, people still give a shit. And you might want to have that original film, and you don't. Right. And but you thought you reached the pinnacle when you got that.
Right.
You reached it, and there was just you didn't even think that it was necessary to get it back. Right. Digital people, they have copies of all this. There was one piece of film that had that image on it. It's gone, unless someone's stole it from me.
Right. Is that your biggest regret? Do you have any regrets from all of your years of shooting?
But what do you mean? My regret by not
following the film every step
of the way?
Well, technology has changed so much, right? So, if I were a famous photographer looking back, I would maybe have wished I had saved this or kept that.
Well, it's like me saying,
I save it. I save it all. It's not me. It's the record company that loses it. That's all. Once you hand it over to the record company, they don't own it. I always owned all my own stuff. But again, you didn't track it down. You didn't think about it that far in advance. In that moment in time, shit is going crazy. I mean, you think about the records that came out in 1986 and 87 and how they still play in nightclubs today.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? It's like those records were coming out. Every week, a hot new fucking record was coming out. Like incredible records were coming out.
Yep.
One after the other, after the other, after the other. It's moving so fast, you can't even keep up. You're just trying to keep up. And when that record came out, you're just... right after this, what am I doing? Oh, Hank and Chuck, we're going to go hang out with Public Enemy. Now there are things going on. You're just moving on to the next thing.
Wow.
And I'm sure to the detriment to a lot of people too, because I remember, even before this album, when the Beasties, Licensed to Ill sold 4 million copies or something like that, right?
Yeah.
After LL had Radio, which was like the biggest album ever at that time. And you ask Earl, and what happened after when the Beasties blew up? LL kind of was forgotten for a minute.
Yeah, Beasties went.
I saw LL walking up Elizabeth Street without a hat on.
Wow.
I didn't even recognize him.
Wow.
I'm not going to talk on that. He had hair. He had hair. He absolutely did. But he was so down.
Right.
Because the Beastie Boys just blew the fuck up.
Yeah, my God.
Is this just proof that racism exists the way that it does, and or how things roll in America?
Yeah, yeah.
But he was walking up the street, kind of
down
in the dumps.
It
wasn't like
when
the
they blew
star
up.
that we saw right there. But that didn't last very long.
No.
He met up, and Rick wasn't producing anymore, but he met up with the LA Posse, these guys who respected him and loved him, and of course, one of the greatest MCs we've ever known.
Yes, absolutely.
The guy who could gargle peanut butter.
Yes.
And and Earl went through all that. I mean, you should bring Earl up on the camera to sit next to you just for a minute.
I totally agree.
Camera at all?
Come on, bro.
Come on up.
Let them introduce you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Round of applause for E-Love, everybody.
E-Love in the building. This is a great day. This is awesome. We get the double. Let me just, man, never had a pleasure. Pleasure's all mine. Yeah, man, definitely. Oh, yeah. Cool, very cool.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there's a great shot on the back cover of the Bad album with Earl is in the photo. And,
okay.
And I wish, do you have the back cover where you're hitting that punching bag?
I don't have it up right now.
Okay, well, I'll tell you one thing right now.
We'll put it on the screen as we're talking.
About that photo, that's where LL lived, in his grandmother's basement.
No way.
He had already had his gold record, and Earl knows it. He was living in the basement at his grandma's house, the washing machine over there, the clothes hanging up on pipes, and that's where we got his LL Cool J jacket in the background. I put that back there just to be right underneath his bicep. It was perfect. And Earl's holding the bag, and Cut Creator's holding the bag, and we got a shot in his basement.
Wow.
LL's bed is right behind me in that photo.
Wow.
With New Edition pictures painted on, stuck to the ceiling from the magazines, because he loved New Edition.
Wow.
And that was his room in his grandma's house. They had one gold record that was on the mantle, and I remember having access to that. I felt very privileged, but this was a young man. LL was a young kid.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and we did those photos. We had a great time doing it, and it was.
E
And I
Love,
loved the
do
music.
you remember the day these photos were taken?
I remember before the photos was taken. How about that? Yeah, but we jumped. We walked a mile and a half, jumped the turnstile, and we went actually on our way to meet Rick Rubin for the first time.
Really?
Yeah, dead serious.
Man,
I go back to '83.
And
This is a
these
whole nother.
before
His
the-
story is much deeper.
Oh,
than
yeah.
mine.
this
It's
is
interesting,
post-Crush
too. I
Groove
mean-
or pre-Crush Groove?
Pre-Crush Groove.
This is pre-Crush Groove.
Way before
Wow.
Crush Groove, yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, you got some history.
Oh, not a whole lot of history.
Yeah.
In 1985, LL Cool J went to a college in Maine, performed at a college in Maine.
I was there.
And this has just recently surfaced on the internet.
What?
If you want to hear a very young LL Cool J with Cut Creator playing to an all-white audience
another
looks,
great DJ, by the way.
they don't even
Cut-
know what they've seen.
Cut
Like
is-
they don't even know what they're looking at.
Cut's amazing.
But this is some of these early times with,
Yeah.
with LL. I mean, you're hanging around these Def Jam guys, and E Love, you know, you are, if you don't mind opening your shirt
Yeah.
a little bit, you are the Public Enemy logo.
Yeah, that's actually the #1 logo in hip hop.
Whoa.
Most recognizable.
Stop.
He is the black man in the Target.
Is that right?
The silhouette.
That's him.
Holy
So
That's literally
That's
his
his
silhouette.
pose.
yeah.
E Love is the original B-boy stance on stage while the band is performing. He's
So
the-
do you recall where you were when you made that
Oh,
stance?
no, what happened was I was on stage, my arms was folded, and Chuck D, Chuck went to school to be a graphic artist.
Right.
And he took the picture and he scanned it in and he put the bullseye on top. He said, "That's my logo right there." So we did the deal.
You know, Chuck D was a graphic designer,
Yeah,
Right.
in
and the
college.
Public Enemy logo he designed. Other people take credit for it sometimes for clean it up, kooks. He is the real one. He's the real deal. He designed his own logo. And of
Wow.
course, that's E Love in the crosshairs.
I've
Because
heard that
that's-
Chuck even named a few groups, and notoriously had a list of names on a sheet of paper. For instance, leaders of the new school.
Of course.
Yeah.
Chuck named leaders of the new school?
Yes.
I'm leaving.
And
Absolutely,
others.
absolutely.
And others.
That's the first time I met Busta Rhymes. He was in Leaders of New School. And Charlie Brown, all those guys. I thought I actually liked that band better than the solo stuff, but what are you going to do?
Speaking of leaders of the new school, we're looking right
wow,
now
okay.
at a Tribe Called Quest.
Right.
And, this is like one of those photos, Glenn, that you can't, you can't put this together. You can only just be there and capture it. Tell us a little bit about, where you guys were when this was taken.
Look at fire.
Jeremy, we don't capture, we make.
We make.
make.
Them.
We
them.
make.
We don't capture them.
They capture, they make.
capture.
They make.
This was, I know Q-Tip when he would come out with the Jungle Brothers on stage.
Oh, I know them,
and
man.
he
I
was
know them
just,
well.
Yeah, and also, I think the first time I saw him do that was they were opening for Queen Latifah at a place downtown. I want to say Club Amazon, and I think it was Latifah's first show in the city, and I just knew him from being around, and we would all be at shows and in the clubs and whatever else, and then he made his demo, A Tribe Called Quest, right, and I helped shop the demo because I knew some people in the record business, and I
Wow.
actually got him his record deal for
Is that
Tribe
right?
Called Quest, yeah, their first album,
Oh, wow.
and after they blew up a little bit, I said we should just shoot some photos one day. And they were recording in the studio on Broadway down by Bleecker Street or somewhere in that area, somewhere in NoHo. And I just came down and shot a couple photos. I'd not even a whole roll of film.
Had you heard the demo yourself?
What are you talking about?
I mean, had you?
Listen to me.
He said,
I wouldn't fucking work on it if
right.
I didn't know it
If
and
you
respect
you
it and
didn't hear
appreciate it.
Yeah.
So was Can I Kick It on the demo?
Yes, but this was before we shot the photos. I mean, the demo stuff was way before I took this photo.
Sure,
this photo
sure,
was
sure.
a year or two later.
Sure.
Okay.
But yeah, the demo was great. I probably have that original demo somewhere.
Oh my God.
And,
No
it was,
way.
and of course, it was a hand-drawn label, and he wrote A Tribe Called Quest. I said, can't you shorten the name? It's like a long name. He's like, nope, this is us.
Wow.
It's a pretty interesting name if you think about it.
great name.
All
No,
the
it-
hip hop
it's a
groups.
great-
It came, yes.
If they weren't great, it wouldn't have worked.
Right.
If they were great,
right.
you could do whatever
exactly.
the fuck you want.
You're right. He's right about that.
Hey, that's kind of true.
This is good. This is nice. This is interesting. It's really interesting.
We're going to do just a couple more photos,
Yeah.
and then we're going to let Glenn go.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Yeah.
one of those, you know, the check your head photo. Well, here, let's just go back to another Public Enemy photo, because this isn't the same jail. This isn't. Where
What
is
is
this?
that? Where did you make that?
This is at the Midtown Traffic Bureau, the same jail that was in the Tougher Than Leather movie with Run DMC, and that's why we went back there, because the production assistant I knew was able to get us a jail. Chuck told me, I heard Black Steel in the Hour of Chaos. He told me the name of the album, and I came up with the whole concept of that album. This photo isn't the cover. This was the shot that maybe could have been the cover. It's definitely better than the cover shot, as far as I'm concerned. But the story for the cover is that at that time, 80% of hip-hop sales at the time were on cassette by that moment, in 87, 88.
Yes. Yes.
And so you're talking about a 2x2-inch thing,
yeah.
2.5-inch, maybe 3-inch square. On CBS had their uniform cassettes. They had the letter, the song names, the red text that said the band name on the edge. It was all, that was CBS, right? That's what they did at the time. I shot these amazing, beautiful photographs. I had a whole concept, and we didn't get to use it because it was a little too sophisticated maybe for the audience at the time. It was a little too arty. Originally, my cover was, and it was, you know, it takes a nation of millions to hold us back. Them breaking out of the jail. And if you have the album cover, you see the sequence I shot on video of them actually breaking out of a jail cell from two different angles. And then the one shot that was supposed to be on the cover was Chuck punching out the camera with his fist. And it's a great shot. His fist is right next to the camera. It's about to knock it out. And that would have been that's what I wanted the album cover to be. And everyone liked it. But then everyone thought it was, again, too sophisticated for the audience, and they wouldn't get it and everything else. So then we had these other shots that I also took that were actual photographs, because I took video and shot pictures of the video for what I was hoping would be the cover. And they actually used that for Don't Believe the Hype, 12-inch in the UK. They used it for that.
Is that
But-
common that you would shoot video and then
Never before. No, and this is VHS fucking video on a big ass
so it's
machine.
low res?
And I'm shooting it but I wanted it to look like a surveillance camera in a jail. So, and we shot it from two different angles, and and the S1Ws come and break them out, and they break out of the jail and the whole thing. And but anyways, we shot just less than a roll of film in the jail. Flavor was very uncomfortable being there. He didn't even show the first time because we all know Flavor had his issues, and he was actually
Yes,
in
going
jail
through his thing.
sometimes.
Yeah, right.
So when it came time to sitting him in the cell, it was very uncomfortable for him. So we did very quick. We shot him in the cell with Chuck. When he made it the second time, we had to go there twice to do it, because the first time Flavor was in jail and he couldn't make it down.
Couldn't make it to
And,
jail because he was in
But,
jail.
but, but
Got it.
we got these photos. We got these photos there. And this is, I think, probably the best photo from the session. Just all the shadows and all the lighting and everything like that. But the another photo we took at this moment wasn't composed quite as perfectly. I was a little bit further away, like inches, and you see more bars. You see all the bars in the smaller shot that's on the album cover. And for the cassette, Hank was like, we need the bars. You need to see more bars so people know they're in jail. And I was like, but the picture's whack. Not this one, the one that's on the album cover.
Right.
Relative to this one. To me, as the artist, this is the perfect composition. This is the perfect character. This is good. But the other one on the 3x3 showed more bars. I said, I'm going to scratch that negative. You cannot use it. It's not the good shot from the session. It's not the good shot. You're fucking up. You cannot do this.
Yeah.
I said, Glenn, if you scratch that negative, we're not going to have an album cover. We need this on the cassette. We need it on the cassette. We'll just have to go with a graphic. And I knew this album was going to be the greatest hip hop album of all time, and it has stood the test of time. I said, fuck you guys. Just, you know.
How
you just gotta
often
use
has
it.
that happened where the label or the artist has just refused the shot that you really thought was the best
It
shot?
happens. It happens. For sure. I mean, people, you know, you have different tastes, and those photos will get out eventually at one time or another, and that's part of the reason we make the books.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I was
You know,
gonna
you can
say.
see
Yeah.
all the photos that editors didn't pick, or that the band, you know, the artist didn't pick, or whatever, and then the truth comes out that I was right all along.
Was there any lighting in this shot?
There you go.
Did you light that at all?
Well, it was just my lighting is a light bulb. I just bring a light bulb with me sometimes and just hang it on a string.
No
you know, or
way.
Oh, are
something
you
like that.
being serious?
Seriously, yeah, and so,
A
I mean,
light
and you have a flash sometimes. Well, but no, for that jail situation, I had like a 400-watt light bulb on one of those, you know, that you buy at the hardware store, the little metal thing that you just put it in, you know. And,
Oh, the little.
you know, portable light that
Yeah.
that you hang in your garage.
Yeah.
And you put it
And that was on top of that jail cell. Yeah.
Wow.
They
That's
might have
really
even
brilliant.
replaced the light that was up there. There might have been a thing up there, and then we just replaced the bulb with a little brighter one.
Wow.
But you know, you just use incandescent light. I mean, that's the natural light. I use a flash sometimes, but very rarely.
As photography moves on from Ansel Adams to Gordon Parks to Glen Friedman to as photography moves
was
on
very
and
nice you
more
included
and
me in
more
those guys.
and more
Right?
is
Pretty
captured,
cool. You deserve it. Though.
does it become less and less possible for there to be another Glen Friedman?
So, what's your question again? I mean, what did you say about that? I didn't hear this part. of that.
We're now capturing so much content that it's become less and less special. Everyone's capturing selfies. Everyone's capturing video.
That's a good question.
Everyone's making
What are your
pictures.
thoughts on that?
Everyone's using effects. Everybody's using AI.
Like you said.
Is it less possible
What do you-
for
yeah.
the original, iconic, someone who brings a new? Is it
Yeah.
harder for that photographer to emerge now?
I think that there's billions of pictures now, right? I
Right.
mean, even 15 years ago, they said the first year of the iPhone, there were more pictures made than in the entire history of photography before that.
Ever, right.
That first year of the iPhone,
Right,
there are more
right.
pictures
Wow.
made than in the entire history of, you know, photography. So, could it? I mean, it's much easier to make a good photograph these days. People are capturing everything. Are they making good photographs? If they have the heart and the artistry and the eye, they will make great photographs. Will they stand out as much as they used to? Well, only amongst the discerning eyes. Because people who don't know any better don't know any better. It's just another photograph of a famous person, and that's all they care about in most cases. Even back then, you know, I would have business issues with some of the record labels. They say, well, you know, your photos are better, but this guy's letting us own the whole session for a quarter of what you're charging for us to use this. Like, well, if you want to do that cheap shit, then go ahead and do it. If you want the real, you have to, you know,
Yeah.
you
You
gotta-
get what you
gotta
pay
do it.
for. You get what you pay for.
Generally, you do.
You get
and
what you
and
pay
it was
for,
never
period.
unreasonable. It just was what it was. But some people were very cheap, or they didn't. They would actually tell me the fans don't recognize the difference necessarily because they were selling celebrity, not culture, and not real. So, and again, you know, the record covers that I did, people still look at them.
They
Those
stand-
other record
they
covers,
hold on.
you don't even know what
Right.
those are.
They
You'll
stand
never
to
see
this
those
day.
again.
They're holding on, and because
Yeah.
again, and this is where we go back to why I keep on driving this point, man. When people ask like our music, like why is the music still sustaining 40 years later? Like your photographs, it's the quality, it's the workmanship, it's the attention to detail. These are things that you can
Absolutely,
you cannot
100%.
you cannot fake that.
It's always been quality over quantity.
100%. Yes, and that's the thing that I really would like. I try to get out every day. You know, yes, it's a million times a million that things are happening. Even with rappers or music or whatever, it's a million times a million than it's ever been. But still, there's still gonna be the longevity factor when there's an attention paid to detail. There's passion in the project. There's belief in it.
Thank
It's
you.
about
Yes.
that. It goes about that. I'm not trying to get a million followers on Instagram. I'm not trying to be, what I want to. I have a vision. I have an ideal. I have a thought. I'm inspired to create a piece of work, something that is organically coming from me. That's all I'm doing it for. Now, whatever happens with it once it gets to public, that's on the public. But that's why I think your photos are sustainable.
Well, I think it's incredible that you said that, being the pop star that you really are, because you came from a very pop place, like that, having that first hit record, and that you could speak the way that you have. Just meeting you today and hearing you say that, I have a new respect and appreciation for you as an artist.
Appreciate that.
And
I appreciate that.
Because you came from a very special place. You were there at the beginning, and your record was the first vinyl to come out, whether it was borrowed partially from the culture and from other people in parts. Well, we all know that you were there, and you're the man, but that you recognize, coming from that place, what you just said that you do. That's why you're still fucking here now.
No, I appreciate you saying that. It means a lot. But again, it speaks. That's what it's all about. Again, here we are, and I've seen this thing in every aspect. From doing it in the basement to doing it, and I was, Levi Stadium, 80,000 people. I've been on both sides of this, but again, it's still. If you understand that, I don't care what it is that you do. I don't care what it is you do. You street sweeper. If you understand the passion of what you do, then I think that's going to be what you leave with the world.
And I just want to close, because we're running out of time here, but I want to close. E-Love, if you don't mind holding up the book right there, Together Forever. I'd like to close by just letting everybody, reminding everybody that they need to buy the book. Okay, please.
We'll
purchase the book, whether you're here now in our audience or whether you're online. This is a really, really special book, and it portrays this type of passion and aesthetic, this organic eye that Glen has brought to these iconic groups that we still love today.
Yes.
I just want to thank you, Glen.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say that this is literally every single of the best of all my Beastie Boys photographs and of all my Run DMC photographs.
Oh, wow.
They're all. It's not just about that tour.
Oh,
it
it's
has very
all of
little to
them.
do with tour. It's every single one of the best photos of both groups I ever made are all in that book. There's
Awesome.
no other ones.
This
and that's
is-
what is it, like 200 and something pages?
It's a collector's
There's like
item.
over 300 images in that book.
This is a collector's
That's a
item.
nice
No
book.
doubt.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
then wait.
Yeah.
Also, Chris Rock wrote the introduction.
Wow.
And you've got words from Chuck D in that book, words from Rick Rubin in that book that he wrote, Russell Simmons wrote in that book, Mike D wrote about Run DMC, Adam Horvitz wrote about Run DMC, Joey Run Simmons wrote about the Beastie Boys, and DMC wrote about the Beastie Boys.
Wow.
So
I'm
that's all the
actually-
words that separates the photos that, put it in another level besides just looking at the beautiful pictures.
And why don't you end us with maybe a thought here? If there's something that you wanted to impart to our culture or our society through your art, through your eye, through your lens, what would that be?
That's a good one.
It's just about keeping it real all the time, and it's a cliche saying in hip hop, but really that's the most important thing. And like Master G said, as long as it's from the heart and there's passion behind it, and you actually believe in it, and you're doing it because it's something you need to do. See, when I made all these photos, I kind of needed to do it. I felt it needed to be done, and I think that's when you do it. If you're just doing it for content or to make a presence online or whatever it is, then just don't even bother. Just leave it alone. Just move on. Do something else. But find that thing that you love, that means everything to you, that's important to you, if you're an artist. Because if you're not an artist, then you don't do that. You do other things in life, and you make those things that count. But if you're going to do art, make it count, make it important, make it real. Don't do it because you're trying to make a living off it or be famous or something. That's just ridiculous.
And on that note, this is the Master G Theater. Where can they find you at, man?
I'm at DJ Boom _LV, and of course you can find the museum at National Hip Hop Museum.
Where can they
E-Love?
find you at?
I'm real simple on IG, E-Love Global, ELOVE Global. Peace out.
Where can they find you on your social media, what you got going on? If somebody wants to reach out to you, or is there where we can reach out and get further updates?
There's a website, burningflags.com,
Okay.
burningflags.com, and, on the social media,
Okay.
they could find you there.
Okay. And me, I'm at the Real Master G, Sugarhill, and of course you can find me At the show's information, all the social media, and of course the museum. This is the Master G Theater. My man Glen Friedman. Oh my God, this
Special
is amazing.
guest drop in with E-Love.
Yes, right.
No
E
doubt.
Love.
Get the buck.
Peace, y'all, and we are out.
Peace.
Thank you.